What's up? It's Gamer Froggy. Welcome back to another installment of the American Girl Doll Build series. Today we are building for the wonderful Addy Walker. Addy is the subject of a lot of important conversations which we will get into after reading her bio. All articles we reference will be linked in the description below, so please check them out because they have amazing information that shape the narrative of today's video. Addy Walker is an African-American girl who, at the start of her stories, is enslaved with her family on a North Carolina plantation during the last years of the American Civil War. In fall 1864, she escaped with her mother, Ruth, to the free North. The two arrived to settle in Philadelphia. Addy spends much of her central series hoping to have her whole family reunited in freedom. Addy's full first name is Aduge after her great-grandmother on her father's side, a name which means much loved in Yoruba, a Nigerian language. It is rarely used, and she is referred to as Addy by family and friends. She was born in the spring. She does not know the exact date of her birth as it was not recorded by her parents. She later picks April 9th due to the celebrations of the end of the Civil War and the assurance she and her family, even not yet united, are all free now. Like many enslaved children, Addy is forced to do hard labor in service to her enslavers. She works in the tobacco fields and serving in the big house as a house servant. Seeing how hard Addy is being made to work breaks her father Ben's heart, seeing her stooping like an old woman and being beat down every day. Ben says that she's at the age where a child learns they are enslaved, and the hope they had as a child is being broken by the daily burdens of being so. At least once while enslaved, Addy is so despondent that she vows she would do anything for God if he would let the family escape slavery. She is warned by her Uncle Solomon not to bargain with him. She rightfully despises that she was ever enslaved and hated being so, and the hard work she endured as an enslaved child. She is close to her family and despondent when they are first separated. First, when her enslaver sells her father and older brother Sam away, and then, in Escape, when she and her mother must leave her baby sister Esther behind with their fictive kin, Auntie Lula and Uncle Solomon, rather than risk being caught in the escape by taking a baby that could not be easily carried or quieted with them. Addy aches for the majority of her series to have her entire family reunited in freedom and often thinks about them and where they could be as motivation in her day-to-day life. She does everything she is capable of to help them be reunited, a goal that is not fully realized for over a year after her and Ruth's escape, and not at all once or as fully as she had hoped, as Solomon dies before arriving to Philadelphia to reunite with the family, and Lula dies very soon after their reunion. After the family is reunited, Addy remains tied closely to each member of her family, even when Esther sometimes bothers her or gets into things. Her friends say she has a strong family pride. Addy is a brave, loving, thoughtful, and kind child who often risks her safety for the safety of others. When Addy first arrives in Philadelphia, she is scared of being alone in the city due to being unused to large city crowds and fear of getting lost, in part because she cannot read. But she slowly becomes braver and more confident in moving around, in part with Sarah Moore's guidance. She still remains shy at times, especially around people she has just met. Addy is a very intelligent child, something her father sees even while they are enslaved, and does very well in school. She learns to read and write well within a few months of starting school, catches up to the skill of Harriet Davis quickly, does well enough to win a spelling bee in her class shortly after her arrival, and is later invited to take further education and enrolls at the Institute for Colored Youth to work towards her goal of being a teacher when she grows up. She is also willing and able to teach others. She starts by teaching Ruth, using cooking dough to shape out letters into the names of their family, and beans to help Ruth learn to read, write, and count. She later helps her father Ben and brother Sam learn simple reading and writing, and after Sarah is forced to drop out of school to help her family make ends meet, Addy offers to teach her so that she can keep learning outside of school. By the time of Shadows on Society Hill, Addy is formally enrolled in ICY and is studying Latin among other subjects as part of her curriculum. Addy is very resourceful and helpful when Ruth is upset that she can't read to deliver the packages that Mrs. Ford has asked her to. Addy, who is not yet a great reader or skilled in traveling around the city, asks Sarah to help her deliver the packages as she can both read and knows her way around the city. Once Addy shows that she can assist in the shopping by picking up and dropping off orders for Mrs. Ford, and will not be a trouble underfoot, she is invited to spend time in the shop, helping tidy up, and is free to keep the tips she earns for her deliveries. Addy does not think it is fair or right that white people believe they are allowed to enslave and abuse black people. She often does not like white people. She even says she hates them. And even as she becomes less fearful of them, she does find many of them and their actions oppressive and racist towards her and other black people. She finds it grossly unfair that whites and blacks are expected to keep separate lives and thinks they should live and work together. She is a proponent of fairness and does not like seeing other people or animals suffer. Addy questions the status quo many times in her series, especially why black people's place in society is expected to be beneath that of whites, and the answers of it just being how things are do not appease her. Addy has moments of fancy and hope, especially about what life in freedom will be like to start, but slowly becomes much more practical, although still given to moments of wishing and dreaming. She still has many moments of idealism, some of which come to happy endings. Addy sometimes leaps before she looks, but also learns to think on her feet and to keep herself and others out of danger. She is curious and wants to surge ahead. She does feel she can trust people before she meets them, more often than not, for good or bad. In her heart, she is an optimist and thinks good of people. However, she is initially and easily influenced and upset by other people, especially her classmate, Harriet. Addy can be very upset and sometimes ashamed of her poverty status, especially in comparison to Harriet, who has the kind of luxurious life Addy expected in freedom. Addy has a lot of personal pride and wishes her family did not have to work so hard to make a life for themselves in freedom, but is often told by her family there is no need to be ashamed of the fact her family works to get by. They are willing to sacrifice to help her meet her goals. One of her favorite treats is ice cream. She tastes it for the first time at a church social. Her favorite color is red. Addy can swim. She was taught to swim by her brother Sam back on the plantation. She likes the outdoors and wilderness, but is squeamish about dead animals and seeing injuries. American Girl characterizes her as courageous and strong. A featured video describes her as resilient. The inspiration for this build today is not based on her actual living status, because I couldn't find much information about that, but rather the idealized version. So I just took a Victorian style and made a very fancy home for her and her family. There's lots of books and it's very calm and relaxing. Basically what I think she imagined life after slavery would be. It is interesting that of all the historical dolls we have covered so far, Addy remains as one of the only dolls still available in stores. Her story, while important and a very real part of American history, is harrowing compared to the other dolls still sitting on store shelves. Addy is the only doll as of now to have endured pure cruelty and hatred, in my opinion. It's a difficult story to tell. An article from the Paris Review that details the role of black dolls in American culture explains how Addy's story taught her about the cruelty of slavery. Quote, in 1864, a 9-year-old slave girl was punished for daydreaming. Distracted by rumors that her brother and father would be sold, she failed to remove worms from the tobacco leaves she was picking. The overseer didn't whip her. Instead, he pried her mouth open, stuffed a worm inside, and forced her to eat it. This girl is not real. Her name is Addy Walker. She is an American Girl doll, one of the 8 historical dolls produced by the Pleasant Company, who arrive with dresses, accessories, and a series of books about their lives. Of all the harrowing scenes I've encountered in slave narratives, I remember this scene from Meet Addy, her origin story, most vividly. How the worm, green, fat, and juicy, burst inside Addy's mouth. At 8 years old, I understood that slavery was cruel. I knew about hard labor and whippings, but the idea of a little girl being forced to eat a worm stunned me. I did not yet understand that violence is an art. There's creativity to cruelty. What did I know of its boundaries and edges? End quote. This is likely not an excerpt that you would find in another story from American Girl. For 17 years, the only doll that African American girls could physically relate to was that of the runaway slave Addy Walker. The argument I would like to make today is that Addy Walker is an important and very real part of American history, but American Girl should have had black dolls before or directly after Addy, so that the only African American Girl doll option wasn't tied to slavery. From the same article, quote, In 2011, the Pleasant Company launched their second Black historical doll, Cecile, a girl growing up in the 1850s New Orleans. She has a white best friend and dreams of finding a gown for the children's ball at Mardi Gras. Many Black parents were relieved when Cecile was introduced. Shelley Walcott, a Milwaukee reporter, wrote that although she, quote, believes learning about the history of slavery in America is critical and should in no way be hidden from our children, end quote, she had also wished the Pleasant Company would release another Black doll, one that celebrated a more positive time in African American history. If you watched the last American Girl doll video, you would know that I had the same sentiments towards Cecile. She was an interesting and compelling character who is, unfortunately, discontinued. We went into why she was discontinued, but it is disheartening and messed up that American Girl discontinued a positive view on African American culture, but kept the one that is entrenched in trauma and sadness. Both stories are equally important, and I'm glad that American Girl crafted both dolls, but they should still both be available. In an article from Collectors Weekly, filmmaker Samantha Knowles explained why it is so important for Black kids to have Black dolls. Quote, many Black doll enthusiasts, like Debbie Behan Garrett, the author of Black Dolls, a comprehensive guide to celebrating, collecting, and experiencing the passion, feels the same way as Knowles' mother did. Quote, I'm empathetic about a Black child having a doll that reflects who she is, Garrett said. When a young child is playing with a doll, she is mimicking being a mother, and in her young, impressionable years, I want that child to understand that there's nothing wrong with being Black. If Black children are force-fed that white is better, or if that's all that they are exposed to, then they might start to think, what's wrong with me? End quote. Please visit the link in the description because this article has incredible information about the history of African American dolls that you should definitely check out. To American Girl doll's credit, like every doll before Addy, American Girl took great care when creating this doll and her story. From an article from Afterlives of Slavery, it depicts the process that went into creating Addy Walker. Quote, the original Addy Walker doll was developed with the help of an advisory board made up of Black scholars, including film producers, historians, experts on African American literature, librarians, and Smithsonian curators. The board decided to set Addy's story during the Civil War rather than other historical periods, like, for example, the Harlem Renaissance, due to their belief that, quote, slavery must be tackled first in order for children to understand more recent history, end quote. The year-long effort of the board ensured that every element of the Addy Walker collection, from her clothing to her jewelry to the illustrations in her books, was historically accurate and representative of a young African American girl. This attention to detail resulted in a doll made from an entirely new mold in order to portray typically African American facial features, and a book series that detailed Addy's life in slavery, her escape, her struggles, and lessons learned in school, a Christmas story, a birthday story, and the eventual reuniting of her family. Her hair was thick and wavy, she had a gap between her two front teeth, and she wore a pink calico dress, straw bonnet, and cowrie shell necklace. Though Addy has drawn a fair share of criticism, mostly for her association with slavery, she is one of the brand's most popular dolls and has remained in production, with only minor changes being made since her original debut, end quote. This one is also linked down below. Please read all of the articles because they greatly helped shape the information going into this video. Addy was and is a historically significant doll. She fits perfectly with American Girl's goal, which is to produce dolls that represent different periods of American history. I can confidently say that without Addy, their collection would be incomplete. Although American Girl has released other African American dolls since Addy, it is not forgotten that they waited 17 years to release another African American doll. Unfortunately, Cecile was packaged with a white doll, and since they were a pair, it drove the price up and resulted in lackluster sales. Addy and Cecile represent real and important parts of American history and should not be overlooked. Today's subject was heavier than the past few videos, but Addy is an incredibly important doll that deserved an in-depth discussion. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it or have any thoughts, please leave a like or comment. All articles I referenced are linked in the description, and again, I couldn't have made this video without them, so a huge shout out to all the authors. We're almost done with the original historical dolls in this series, and we'll be moving into the 20th century with Samantha Parkington next. If you're interested in that, subscribe so you don't miss her. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.